Grifter's Bible, a novel by El Shaboons, read by El Shaboons, with sound design by Monumental Sonic Architecture. Chapter 9, The Battle of All-American. Glasses! A clap of thunder reverberated through the plywood floor of the rat's nest. The dust lifted. It was time. Daddy's going to All-American, Seph yelled down the access tunnel. The waiting was done. It was finally time to retrieve Seth's beloved mixing board from Vince, the manager of All-American Pawn. All of the money from our shoebox bank that we had depleted buying out Chuck Vu's amps and cabs had been replaced by the frenetic tithing that followed on Sunday. The St. Vitus ritual of sweat and ecstatic motion that came with the added decibels enraptured the congregation. Porno scenes don't flex the way our walls seem to inhale human body rhythms just to exhale back the silent breeze that made the magnetic field such an intoxicating substrate to receive an epiphany inside of. The smell of pennies and ammonia filled the air. Sunset had come on garnet and chilly as Sunday service came to a close, and by Monday morning I didn't want to leave my warm little womb to go traipsing around southeast Dallas under the white liquid sun. Seph hollered, "I need your driver's license." The mixer had been pawned using my driver's license, so my driver's license was required to get it back out. I dragged my aching ass out of my sleeping bag, popping and cracking like a sore knuckle. I padded like an aged lion down the access way to the upstairs landing. I mumbled, "Vince isn't going to let you use my license if I'm not there to sign for it." I crawled out of the wall like an elderly roach. Seph was ready and waiting. "I know all about Vince. That's why you're getting the lead out of your ass and going over there with us." "Who's us?" I wiped the sleep off of my face. "Christmas." Billy Goat stepped out of the corner of my eye and barked in my ear. I just about jumped out of my skin. "Yep," Evil put in her 2 cents. "Get your shoes on, Pop-Pop," Seph piled on. "Last one to the truck's a rotten egg." I must be some kind of moron because that's all it took to get my shit in gear. Sock-footed and slow-eyed, I trampled down the stairs. Billy Goat and Evil were already out the door by the time my toe touched the preaching floor. I trundled through the Monday blitz of housekeeping as the street team swept away the usual effluvia that followed every show. Dwayne was back after working the night shift, trying to learn all the chords in our hymnal. "Give me a second," Seph commanded as I hot-footed out the door. Suddenly I was all alone on the patio with my shoes in my bandaged hands. I could hear Seph inside giving out directions for clearing the place on stage where he planned to situate the mixing board. I sat on Seph's wicker throne. I began the arduous process of tying my shoes with both hands mummified in gauze and tape. An ethereal halo of slow-motion birds orbited the column of dissipating magnetic energy emanating up from the building. I surveyed the mana arrayed before me. Jim's origami menageries were multiplying. The prayer stones and cards with written wishes were scattered everywhere. An unknown wave of aroma jumped out of the ozone and filled my nose with cocoa butter and men's cologne. I held my breath and froze. A well-put-together blur exerted itself in my peripheral vision. "Dadgum, this wasn't Samuel kind of communion wafers y'all feeding this flock, Doc. Y'all got sheep working like army ants." "Huh?" I looked up. "Who?" "Well, this is Velvet T. Walker, mighty Holy Ghost talker, and I reckon you're just the deacon I mean to be seeking. I've seen you before, baby. Franklin is the name, right? You remember me, of course." T craned his neck like a turtle full of soul. "Franken." The correction fell out of my gawking mouth. Touched by fine red flames of processed hair, his bony shoulders were wrapped in an iridescent green Ferrecci tuxedo jacket with matching peg slacks and an emerald scully. A dicky dripping with gold and crosses dangled over his heart, and some custom green Stacey Adams wingtips sparkled like fantastic toys at his rat-a-tat-tapping feet. Yes, I remembered him. Of course. "What's all to do with these rocks?" T picked up one of the prayer stones that the flock had left behind the night before. He held it up and out so he could read the need that had been inscribed on the smooth white surface. "This here's such and such, and I ain't worked a day since." Velvet T moved his lips as he read. "Amen." Huh. He scrunched his nose up in consternation. Even his manicure seemed to get the gas face as his fingers gingerly pinched the object like it was a sandwich. "Those threads are tight, Brother T." Seph stepped out into the waiting day. "Son!" T threw her there, and the two of them shook like a brotherhood of thieves. "You digging my stones?" Seph grinned at T's other hand. "That's only $10 for a hot-wired telegram that's going straight to the Lord's to-do list. Throw in another $5 and I'll bless it so he knows you're for real." I waited for T to start kissing Seph's ass over our little moneymaker, but he turned his nose up like he'd been given the keys to a luxury car made out of broken Legos. "Come on, y'all. Strike one." T held out the rock and let it drop back in Seph's open hand.
I mean, that's a cute couple of bucks and all, but it's a little third grade. And I'll savvy you're already a bit more advanced than all of that.
T made it plain, but Seph still raised his eyebrows.
How you mean?
T threw his hands up to the sky.
Praise Jesus and amen. But if you're looking to sweep up in this game, you gotta get you some product with your name on it, playboy. Like what?
I was genuinely curious.
Y'all go on and do like I do and make yourself a DVD of one of your shows. Or if you're on the cheap, then make it a CD.
Easy peasy. Seph snapped his fingers and squinted at T.
You know what? I was just on my way out to get my mixing board out of this situation I put it in.
He paused, lost in his own thoughts.
Man, that thing got me a Grammy.
Seph's mind was off gallivanting in dreamland.
Toot toot.
T nodded at Seph.
There you go, player. Now you're jumping like a grasshopper would.
He tapped the tips of his phalanges on Seph's right shoulder.
Shoot, I cover my yearly nut mostly by selling a CD at my Christmas pageant. And then I sell me a DVD of the Christmas pageant every year at Livestock. What's Livestock?
I interrupted. T snorted at me.
This is the biggest gathering of Christian souls left standing in America. Only happens around Good Friday, up there in Dodge.
T whistled to himself in the world.
Shoo-wee, that's double good money.
The look in his eyes was vast. With that, he gave me the hi-hat and turned back to address Seph.
But never mind Easter. What I really came over here for in the first place is to talk with you about that Christmas show of mine. I'm all ears, so to speak.
Seph's intrigue was at its peak.
Cool. Well, it's like this. One brother to another. I still ain't getting by with my girl's nephew doing my live mix for me. And I dang sure can't afford to leave that DVD I was talking about selling in his hands. I mean, that's my product, dog.
T shot his cuffs and shrugged.
And professional pride won't let me sell my people anything but the best.
T looked around as the moment lingered.
So I was thinking that maybe you'd come down and point them speakers in the right direction. Maybe work the mix for the show.
Seph shot up straight.
You want me to mix for a venue, do the capture, and then mix for tape? That's some favor, brother. Aw, you give me a few good afternoons of your magic ears and I'm straight.
T put his hands up like, see?
What's the pay?
I put in. T hollowed me out with laser eyes.
Well, my brother, there ain't no pay right now, per se. I mean, I can get you the cheese after Easter when the DVD sells out, but at the moment I'm still a little thin on my fiscal since that daggum storm tore up my bottom line.
T paused and then made his push.
I tell you what, though, I got a storage lot down around Jefferson that's all filled up with stuff y'all might like to get a good look at. Church stuff. Like what? I don't know.
T flustered at me and threw his hand towards the sanctuary.
It takes a whole lot more than pews and a pulpit to make it mark these days. You just gotta go on down there and take a look.
T put his fingertips to his chest and inclined his head in service.
But whatever I got over there is the stuff I used over the years to climb myself up on top of this mighty rock where you see me standing today.
He chewed his bottom lip and let slip.
I'll let you take anything out of there that y'all think you can use. Take what you need, as a thank you. Like I said, from one brother to another.
Dwayne's keyboard rippled the window panes with a butterscotch tone. A weird look corkscrewed T's face. He pursed his lips and shot a thumb back over his shoulder.
That sounds like this one old boy I know.
Seph nodded proudly and smiled.
Yeah, that's my new organist. Name's Dwayne.
T stood up straight and hitched his pants at the waist.
Nah.
He wasn't buying something.
Ain't no way that's Dwayne Castillo,
he declared. Even Seph looked a little surprised to see the recognition on T's face.
You know him? I've known his mama and daddy since school.
T donned a smile touched with memory.
Back around the time when Dwayne's daddy passed, I gave his mama a little part-time job to see her through until she found something more permanent. Oh yeah?
Seph seemed to reassess Dwayne's value right then and there.
Yeah.
T deflated.
Yeah, but then she found her a good spot with the Right Reverend Randall Roberts. She was gone to the country after that.
He shook his straightened hair with a touch of regret.
My wife thought it was getting on to me, telling me I could have been as big as the Right Reverend if I kept on Mary's good side.
He straightened his lapels and pinched the buttons on his jacket.
But it ain't no thing. Sometimes the Lord lets it rain on me, so I learned how to walk between the raindrops. T's paper's looking real good, so I ain't gonna sweat the past.
He worked his neck like a yard cock and poked me in the belly.
Not for nothing, but here's a bit of advice. If you get the opportunity, get Mary in here for one of your shows. Then you give her that CD I was talking about you making. Let her take it and put it out there on her grapevine for you.
He stopped and didn't say anything else.
And?
Seth spoke into the lull. T smiled with teeth and held it for an extra beat.
And then you'll see what old Mary Castillo is good at cooking up.
Seth contorted his face in intrigue. T was familiar with the reaction.
Oh yeah. That girl works so hard for the Lord, he done give her an extra 15 minutes every hour just to get it all done.
T poked me in the belly and suggested,
seriously though, get that girl in your front row some morning. You're gonna go to lay down your head knowing you got a sellout crowd every weekend after that.
I raised an eyebrow.
Oh yeah? Bet.
T looked down and brushed something off the crotch of his slacks.
I call her God's yellow pages. Like I say, that girl loves to talk, and she's all about Jesus. And she's been doing it since we was both little.
T snorted.
Girl got contacts with contacts that got connections all the way down the East Coast and in every city from Atlanta, Houston, Mobile, Memphis, Nashville, you name it. She toured with the Reverend up and down the West Coast and through the mountains. She got family up in Illinois and Baltimore, scattered all in between here and there. She got the entire Midwest on lockdown just like Belle. If your name's on her lips, then you got a ready-made crowd in every one of those cities she's got a cleat in. She'll get you started touring before too long.
Seph's eyes went a million miles away. He promised to consider mixing for T, and then the two of them shook on it.
Well, we gotta go on and get for now.
Seph was all about his mixing board. T took off with his nephew, and then it was off to All American with us. Billy Goat rocketed down Canton until it teed into Main Street at the Exposition Nexus near the site of Seth's mojo-debilitating motorcycle wreck. I was riding between Billy Goat and Seph with Evil in my lap. The dun of Deep Ellum gave way to the leafy green fringes of the East Dallas barrio. I scratched Evil until she shivered. She blinked and smiled beneath the puddles in her eyes. I saw a wide shadow darken the road ahead. Some vast wraith overtook the truck. I craned my neck to take a look at the mystery bomber. I saw a dense wedge of dusty wings flying in type V formation. A Praetorian horde of pigeons were chaperoning our vector. A massive rumble of mockingbirds followed like a grim rear guard. They flew ahead of us on Columbia, as if they knew right where we were going. Seph punched the palm of his right hand.
What?
I kneaded the fur at the base of Evil's skull.
That CD old Velvet T was talking about sounded like just the thing to blow the dust off my baby girl here once we pick her back up from Vince. She's gonna need a workout after being away from me for so long. What do you think?
I think it stinks on ice. A CD raised all sorts of red flags in my estimation. It represented a renewed commitment to the grift. It meant the likelihood of a much longer time frame, and never mind the fact that it opened us up to a new kind of exposure. The whole point of a promotional device was to bring more people into the fold. More random folks in the vicinity of the beast meant unchecked scrutiny of what went on during our services. That exponentially increased our chances of getting pinched for the theft of the relay.
Well, pinch your nose and put on a parka because that's money.
Seph settled the debate for the moment. Billy Goat pulled to a stop at the light at Fitzhugh. I looked up from where I was digging into the pit of Evil's back and saw the white vertical letters that spelled out the word pawn in busted tubes of argon down the eastern corner of the old movie theater that Vince had converted into the All-American building. Payday loans and cash for gold were offered up on the old marquees and broken zip track in sunburnt pink bubble-formed letters. As we idled at the light, I watched our winged contingent assert itself. The black cloud settled onto the roof of the pawn shop like a bad toupee. The fake owl sitting at the top of the white brick turret on the western corner of the building was knocked unceremoniously to the ground and shattered next to a bollard on the tarmac. I heard a car backfiring, muffled like it was behind closed doors. The swarm of birds rose up and hovered about 2 feet above the roofline before lighting back onto their roosts.
Light screen.
Seph spoke out of nowhere.
Well, give me a chance to move my foot, Tom Slick.
Billy Goat stomped on the gas and plowed forward into the intersection without grace, gunning the accelerator all the way to the left-hand turnout that accessed the parking lot along the east side of the All-American building. He stomped the brake and we lurched to a halt. We waited for a slowly approaching Buick to pass us from the opposite direction.
Come on!
The three of us yelled at the driver of the car. A flash of light popped behind the murder-tinted windows of the glacial sedan.
People driving like sissies.
Billy Goat groused.
Forget them.
Seph suddenly bristled.
Take a look at this.
I followed his finger to the bicycles and lawnmowers chained to the sales racks out in front of the old box office booth. The front door flew open in a shotgun arc. I saw the shape of some orc in a balaclava come spilling out of the entrance. The door banged on its catch so hard that I thought the mirrored glass would break. Then the spring-loaded door yanked itself closed just as fast as it had opened, trapping one of the dark-shaped shoes in the jam. Doink! The shadow fell and I watched voluminous dollar bills plume out of the neck of the hoodied thief while assorted shapes spilled out of the duffel bag slung across his shoulder. The contents clattered onto the ground. I watched him free his leg from the door jamb in a nervous bungle, and then he got up onto one knee and started stuffing the closest of the loose items back into his bag. There was a pistol in the trembling black-gloved hand that he was using to gather his booty, and suddenly that was all that I could focus on. While I went autistic on the pistol, Seph shouted in my ear,
"That jackass is scratching up one of my talkback boxes."
The thief fumbled a carbonized cylinder with a windscreen that rolled off and over to the sidewalk.
"He just dropped my Sennheiser."
Seph was apoplectic as split seconds gave way to the last straw.
"And that's my Grammy."
Seph roared and flung his hand at the door as the robber scooped up the cheap little statuette. The bandit scoured the vicinity for loose items, but time forced him to cut his losses, and he left the microphones and black boxes behind. I watched him limping towards the parking lot where red brake lights lit up the building. A double-parked Honda Civic, the most stolen car in America that year, was waiting. Cannons don't roar the way Seph deafened me when he said, "Waylay that!" to Billy Goat. That's when things started moving fast. "Christmas!" was Billy Goat's battle cry as he spun the steering wheel with his left hand and barred Evil from being jostled with his right. Before I could even complete the arc that it took to turn my head in time to witness Billy Goat's reaction, my temple was lashed back and to the left. My head smacked into the rear window as the Ford suddenly lunged forward with a sickening fury. White reverse lights were already lit, and the Civic was moving backwards as the thief ran behind it. The bag of loot and the thief plunged into the open passenger side door. Like inevitability, those white lights charged toward us, and before I was ready, Billy Goat rear-ended the Civic. The blunt force of two unfeeling machines colliding sent a shockwave through my toes all the way to my soul. It's scary the way desperate humans can bump and bore into one another. The Honda and the Ford met like chocolate and peanut butter, and my chest slammed forward into Billy Goat's outstretched right arm. The Civic's back bumper was sacrificed to the gods of lunatic clatter as Billy Goat's right foot brought both vehicles to a hard stop in the middle of the driveway. I looked forward through the shockwave and watched the windshield turn red. The white reverse lights disappeared. The driver's side door was flung open. The disgruntled body of the waylaid Civic grumbled like an agitated black beetle with a big smoking red butt. A cholo in brown flannel with 3 blue teardrops on his cheeks suddenly popped up from the driver's side door like a whack-a-mole. His eyes found me first, and I felt the aggressive black hatred in his eyes. But then the driver looked over at Billy Goat, and something seemed to click, judging by the look on his face. Retreat. The driver banged his shoulder on the corner of the open door. He went down in a heap, but righted himself before limping forward. Fast. The collision flicked that primal switch in Seph's brain, and his voice instantly shed all propriety.
"Stop that kid while I go and get my Grammy."
Seph's spit hit my right cheek and earlobe, and then he was gone from my right side. I was in shock. Was he talking to me? I sat there trying to collect enough gumption to get out of the truck.
"Already on it."
The space to my left that had been filled with Billy Goat's massive shoulder just up and disappeared. I felt the vibration on top of my crotch take on a note like a burring dynamo. I looked down and I saw Evil's canines on display. Teeny cleats scratched the out of my crotch. I winced as Billy Goat pawed at Evil's black nape of scruff. Her tiny body pressed into my lap just before she was lifted bodily and yanked out the door. Then I witnessed Billy Goat's skills in action. A solid underarm toss sent the puppy flying through the air in a straight line for what seemed like an impossibly protracted instant. If PETA, or the ASPCA, had seen it, they would have condemned it as the baldest form of animal cruelty. But from what I could see, Evil was plenty eager to be the one chosen to slow the getaway driver down. The pup flew through the air in a Superman pose. As if magnetically attracted, the black missile of fur and teeth left Billy Goat's kielbasa fingers and zeroed in on the sleeve of the target. And it got ugly from there on out. The impact of Evil knocked the driver for a loop, and the guy doubled over. Evil clamped down on his wrist. He was forced to take a knee. Weighed down by the wriggling, gnawing dog attached to his right arm, the thug sunk to the ground so low that Evil was able to put all 4 paws down on the parking lot without loosening the grip of her jaw.
Ah!
Evil's teeth sunk deep into the flesh of the hood's wrist. Her head throttled and thrashed back and forth in a rending, spindling, tearing fury. She drew first blood and didn't stop. I finally scooted out of the driver's side door, putting feet on the ground just in time to hear the disturbingly feminine scream coming out of the guy with the neck tattoos as he scrambled up off of the ground at the back of the parking lot.
Ah!
Chilled by the realness of the terror in that peal, I looked away and told myself I was checking to see if Seph needed some help. But Seph was long gone behind the purple-painted fence of Mis Casuelas next door. I couldn't see where he and the Grammy thief had run to, so I looked back to the driver. I stepped away from the truck a little as I watched Evil gnashing at the driver's sleeve, tethering him to a spot in the parking lot while Billy Goat began stalking forward. The driver's head popped up at Billy Goat's approach, and I saw the white of the thug's eyes pop open wide above those blue teardrops. He bore his teeth in a grimace of fear and started windmilling his right arm. I thought, he ought not to do that. I stood frozen at the sidewalk watching the scene of Evil's little feet and tail wiggling helplessly as the driver swung his arm in a lunatic orbit. A piddling little David just trying to gather some steam as the new Goliath approached like doom. Evil was swung up clockwise once, and then twice, growling louder with each rotation of the driver's arm until the puppy reached high noon on the third swing when I saw Evil's teeth bared just a little extra wide. It was a bridge too far, and at 3:15 the pug lost hold. My heart dropped when I saw the dog fly from the driver's sleeve towards the side of the building. I started to take a step forward and heard the pup hit the building with the thud of a potato dropped on a table. Evil eeked and the dog's body splayed in a right angle against the back corner of the building. She fell off the wall and dropped into the weeds with a sigh. She had to have broken her back. The birds in the gallery all along the edge of the building rose up in protest. A dusky feather-encrusted golem threw up its hands in frustration and cawed foul on the driver's play. The cholo looked up at Billy Goat like he knew he'd whiffed it bad. I almost yelled something, but before I got a chance, Evil's head popped up from the milkweed, and her spine straightened back to a normal angle. Evil twisted herself right with a little jump, then she bounced back onto four legs before running back to the fray like the little cousin of Cerberus.
Dude, I am about to mush dirt so far down your hole you'll be dust bunnies until the next century, you zilch piece of...
Billy Goat called the signals and made his intentions clear as he closed the final distance between him and the thief. The mush is the act of placing one's splayed-fingered palm flat onto someone's face and pushing backwards. Every bouncer in America that's ever worked a bachelorette party can tell you about it from experience. All of them know what it means, and it is never a sign of respect. It is a last resort. Feathers flew from the sky, descending on thermals. The birds flapped their wings wildly at Billy Goat. I looked back down and I could see the cold morning sun casting monumental shadows onto the wall through the canyons between Billy Goat's inch-wide fingers. I looked at the chipped bricks and saw the negative image of some prehistoric wingspan dropping down on a lump of prey. I looked back over just in time to see Billy Goat's descending palm connect with the naturally flattened nose of his victim. The birds on the marquee whooped in horror. The driver lost his center of gravity and dropped out of his defensive squat. He sat flat on his ass in a puddle with one simple push of Billy Goat's wrist. A schwitz of muddy water spritzed up upon impact and drenched the cholo's swelling face. Evil shot back into the skirmish to keep stirred. She bounced like a four-footed pugilist all around the perimeter. She barked at the prone figure as the onion head recovered from the shock of Billy Goat's opening assault.
Give! Y'all give! Call off the bitch, cabron!
The kid pled for mercy from behind a defensive shoulder as Evil really laid into him.
Who you calling a bitch, you dog-abusing piece of trash?
Mush. Billy Goat's palm descended, and the kid's head was knocked back so far that it bounced off of his own spine. And when his face rebounded with only the whites of his eyes showing, there was only more mush there to greet him. Mush. Down in a puff of parking lot dust, the thug went face first into the concrete with nary a handhold to slow down the impact. Delirious like an amateur drunk and punchy from the impact, the cholo actually made one more effort to get back up. Evil nipped at the kid's fingertips as he pushed on the gravel trying to get any upward momentum going at all. Reeling, the trash actually got his feet flat on the ground and stood about halfway up. I was well within earshot by this point, and I could catch the ragged gasping of the bloodied thug as he battled gravity and faltered. The accusing birds were one deafening call. But then above their den, from somewhere down the alley behind Mis Casuelas, I heard Seph's brazen voice bellow out,
Clothesline that turd! Punch him in the off button!
And then I saw the Grammy thief come sprinting down the alleyway straight towards Billy Goat and Evil, with Seph pursuing him at a medium pace. Seph had the duffel bag slung over his shoulder, and the Grammy thief's face was puffy and marked by dark streams of claret from his ears and nose. For some reason I looked down at Evil, and I could almost swear I saw a smile. I looked up at Billy Goat, and there was no doubt that I saw a smile. The birds fidgeted on the roofline. The mush went down once again, and when it came back up, Billy Goat had a fistful of gangbanger flannel. Billy Goat's Get Higher dye tattoo flicked with the corded muscle movement of his right arm, and the bleary driver was suddenly set up straight on his shaky feet. Evil's head dropped down like some great explosion was about to take place. Billy Goat drew his striking arm straight back, palm up, fingers splayed. Mush! The Cholo went sprawling straight into his partner. The two of them took a nosedive like a couple of cartoon villains as they collided into a heap in the middle of the alleyway. Their clever plan was spoiled by some random skull-clapping do-gooders. The Grammy fell out of the one kid's hand as he slipped towards unconsciousness on his way to the ground, but Seph was there to snatch the statuette safely out of thin air. The birds lit satisfied on their perches when Seph held the little speaker up to the light of the morning sun. He confirmed the inscription on the tiny plaque on the base.
Joseph Smith, sound engineer,
spoke the legend to the sky.
Una pinche puta madre.
What I thought was a response came from behind my back. I spun around fully expecting to find gangbanging reinforcements arriving. I was certain that I wasn't going to get out of all the fisticuffs without a scarring fracas, but I saw Vince's heaving globular form approaching. He was covered in torn strips of duct tape from his cheeks to his ankles, and he was double-fisting a scarred and age-polished baseball bat in his adrenalized death grip. His sad tan uniform was soaked through with sweat, and I could easily make out his nipples poking through the fabric below the dampened All-American logo on his right breast. He waddled up to the tete-a-tete.
I told your mama to you pinche piece of shit, but she said no. Jesus said no, but I'm done with Don Cristo. He can put up with your thieving from now on, because I put up with it to here, and now I'm done, tu puta.
Vince hawked a tiny lunger in the face of the thief, and the kid started bawling like a 10-year-old girl.
Primo!
Was all the kid could say to beg for mercy. Family politics is hard to watch from the outside. But what was even harder to watch was Vince taking the baseball bat and swinging it awkwardly to try and connect with the kid's head. Billy Goat and Seph lunged forward in tandem, one grabbing the bat, the other grabbing Vince. Billy Goat wrangled the kid out of immediate harm's way.
Whoa, take it inside. We gotta take this way inside, y'all.
They made their way across the parking lot, around the corner, and back inside of the store. I put the Civic in neutral and used the Ford to push it back into the parking lot. Then I grabbed our shoebox bank from under the bench seat of the Ford. I took the keys to both vehicles and ran to the store. I closed the door behind me, and as I rotated the lock home into the latch, I noticed Vince crumpled into a sticky, sobbing pile of sweat with nervous tears staining Seph's shoulder. The staff was still taped up inside. Their faces were horrified. Vince cried for a moment more. Seph tried to comfort him. He showed him what else was inside of the duffel bag along with the microphones. Vince started hyperventilating with relief. There was a hefty chunk of change mixed in with the gear. Vince played it off as the Black Friday holiday weekend's receipts for the shop, but I bet Bart didn't pull in piles of cash like that. Jabbing his hand into the bag, Vince got a rough count of the money without looking inside. When he looked back over at us, there were big fat teardrops just waiting to fall, and he kind of deflated like the happiest little balloon.
Thank you, Joe. You boys done good for me. What can I do for you?
Without a pause, Seph laid his case out in whole, initially going for complete forgiveness of his debt and the gratis return of his mics, preamps, and his Grammy. But Vince was nowhere near delirious enough to let the word free float around in his store, so I handed the shoebox over. He counted it out in the open, and then Seph gave him his sheaf of pawn tickets. Vince did the numbers in his head and noted the deficit to everyone gathered. Seph said, "Yep," as in, "So now what do we do?" That's when Vince went and got a cell phone from the back room and made a phone call. His voice was grim. I caught about every other word as he told someone the story of the robbery and what had happened in the parking lot. Vince spoke of the money we had, the money Seph owed, and the two thieves still in our custody. I heard him flip the phone closed, and then he walked back out to the showroom floor. Vince called Billy Goat and Seph into the back room while I finished untying the sales clerks and the cleaning girl. When I was done, I didn't dare venture over the threshold of that back room, so I just stood there and tried not to make eye contact with the staff while they chattered in Spanish and thanked me. Finally, Billy Goat came back and told me to go pull the truck around to the back door. I left the keys for the Civic next to the register. When I pulled around, the board was in Billy Goat and Seph's arms. I sidled up and Vince helped him spread out a tarp in the back. The board was already covered in moving blankets. Seph took 10 minutes to separate the rest of his gear from Vince's inventory, and then he and Vince came back outside to the truck.
You did good, Joe.
Vince shook Seph's free hand again, and then he said,
But you better go now. The store's closed for the day, and some people are on the way.